A bloodied German shepherd collapsed at the police station doorstep, a USB drive strapped to his shredded vest. No one knew where his handler was, but what he carried would launch the largest manhunt the town had ever seen. The double doors of the Midtown Police Department swung open just before dawn, the hinges groaning in the early silence. At first, no one moved. A soft wind drifted in from the street. Then came the sound, sharp claws scraping against tile, heads turned. A German shepherd, coated in dried mud and blood, stumbled into the station lobby. His fur was matted, his eyes wild with pain and exhaustion. Each breath rattled in his chest. His left paw dragged slightly behind him, and his hind leg gave out with a quiet thud as he collapsed onto the cold linoleum floor. "Jesus," whispered Sergeant Riley from behind the front desk. Is that Axel?" Officers jumped to their feet. One dropped his coffee. Another rushed forward but stopped short when the dog let out a low, warning growl. Even on the edge of collapse, Axel was still on duty, still guarding something. That's when they noticed the vest. The tactical gear strapped to his body was torn in places, the straps frayed and crusted with dirt. But on the front, barely hanging on, was a piece of paper. It was wet, almost unreadable, but someone grabbed it gently with gloved hands. Tucked inside one of the vest's pockets was a sealed plastic bag containing a small USB drive. No one said a word at first. They just stared. "Get the vet on the line," barked Captain Monroe, snapping out of it. "And someone call the chief. Now!" An officer knelt beside Axel, his voice soft. "Easy, buddy. You're safe now." The dog's eyes flicked toward him, and for a second they softened. Then his head dropped to the floor, his body limp. The room turned frantic. Officers cleared a space, grabbing a blanket, water, anything. Detective Lorna Hayes stepped forward and gently removed the USB from the vest. Her hands shook. She glanced at the paper and read aloud the only legible words. "If he made it back, follow the trail." Her voice cracked. "Where's Officer Reyes?" someone whispered. Silence. Officer Mia Reyes, Axel's handler, partner, and best friend, had been missing for 2 days. Last seen leaving for a follow-up on a local trafficking lead. She hadn't checked in. No radio, no GPS, nothing. Until now. "He came back alone," Hayes said softly, staring down at the dog. "Whatever happened out there, she sent him." Axel didn't move. But even in his stillness, there was purpose. He had made it home. Bleeding, broken, but alive. And with him, a message. The precinct buzzed to life. Phones rang. Sirens flickered on. The USB was rushed to tech. The vet was en route. But nothing in that moment was louder than the silence surrounding the dog on the floor. He had come back through hell to deliver a clue. And the way he had collapsed at the exact threshold of the station? It wasn't a coincidence. It was a mission completed. And it was only the beginning. Before Axel became a hero, he was just a number in a kennel. K947. Cold concrete, metal bars, and a silence that settled like dust. He didn't bark much, didn't wag his tail. He'd stopped doing both after the explosion that took his handler, Officer David Shaw. They said Shaw died instantly. Axel didn't. He survived, injured, confused, waiting beside the burning wreckage for help that came too late. Weeks passed. No new assignments, no visitors. Just days blending into one another. Then came Officer Mia Reyes. She walked into the K9 facility without saying much. She wasn't flashy, didn't wear dark sunglasses or stomp her boots like others did. She moved quiet, like someone who watched before she spoke. The handler in charge handed her a list of available dogs. She barely looked at it. Instead, she stopped in front of Axel's kennel. The German shepherd sat still, eyes locked on hers. His ears twitched, just slightly. "He's not the easiest," the handler warned. "Shut down after Shaw died. Got some trauma. Failed reevaluation. Most people pass him by." Reyes crouched down, ignoring the man. "What's his name?" "K947. She looked at the dog. "You don't look like a number to me." That afternoon, she filled out the paperwork. She didn't take any other dogs for a trial, didn't ask for backups or alternates, just loaded Axel into her cruiser and drove back to the precinct. At first, Axel barely responded. He didn't sleep much, flinched at loud sounds, pushed his food bowl away unless she sat beside him. But Reyes didn't push. She sat with him on the floor of the K9 unit every night, just listening to the ticking of the wall clock, sharing small bites of sandwich or humming old songs under her breath. One night, after a long shift, she whispered, "You lost someone. Me too." Her voice cracked slightly. "We don't have to talk about it. But we don't have to stay stuck either." The next morning, Axel brought her a worn tennis ball, dropped it at her feet. Just once, but it was enough. From that day on, they were a team. Not loud, not flashy, but tight. Reyes didn't use treats to train Axel. She used trust. He didn't respond to commands. He responded to her voice. A quiet click of her tongue, a raised eyebrow, a small nod. He learned again to trust not just the job, but the person beside him. Their bond became something other officers noticed. At crime scenes, in the car, during long nights of surveillance, they moved like one. A silent partnership made of second chances. That bond was tested when their unit was assigned to a special investigation, deep, quiet, and dangerous. A new nonprofit had opened in the city, run by a former military officer named Hal Beckett. It promised to help veterans with housing, therapy, and job placement. But something didn't sit right with Reyes. Paper trails were messy, people disappeared, and some of the veterans coming in didn't come out. When Reyes asked to look into it further, she was warned to back off, said it was political, said it was above her pay grade. But she didn't listen. Neither did Axel. Because once you've been burned by betrayal, you can smell it in the air. And both of them knew this wasn't just a case. It was something darker, something waiting to be exposed. The morning officer Mia Reyes disappeared started like any other. She arrived early, her usual quiet self, dressed in plain clothes and wearing her badge tucked away. Axel trotted beside her, his vest marked for patrol, but his ears already alert. The sky was gray, thick with low clouds. There was a weight to the air, like the weather knew something no one else did. Reyes checked in at the precinct, picked up a marked cruiser, and signed out a body cam. "Just a follow-up," she told Sergeant Riley. "Routine. Shouldn't be more than an hour." She didn't say much more than that. The location she was heading to was listed in her notebook, an old military warehouse 25 miles outside city limits. Once a storage facility for surplus gear, it had been bought 5 years ago by a shell company tied to Hal Beckett's nonprofit. On paper, it was a veteran-run community training center, but no training had ever been reported. No events, no traffic in or out. Just an empty building with new locks and fresh security cameras. Reyes had been digging quietly. She didn't tell many people, not because she didn't trust them, but because she trusted the case more. Trusted Axel most of all. The last person to see her was a gas station clerk in a small town just before the highway turnoff. She bought water, a pack of gum, and a sandwich. The clerk remembered Axel because the dog sat so still in the back seat. Said he looked more like a soldier than a dog. That was 2 days ago. After that, nothing. No radio check-in, no GPS ping, no body cam footage uploaded. No return to base. At first, no one panicked. Reyes was known to go quiet during follow-ups. She worked best when left alone, and her instincts were rarely wrong. But by nightfall, Sergeant Riley started to feel the itch. Calls went unanswered. Her phone went straight to voicemail. The cruiser's GPS tracker hadn't updated since noon. He filed a report, quietly, no press, no internal alert. By morning, her fellow officers were combing the county. They found her cruiser parked under thick brush about a mile from the warehouse. The keys were missing. The back door was open. No signs of struggle, but the passenger seat was covered in Axel's fur. His leash was still clipped to the headrest. Reyes's badge was gone. Axel's vest was gone. Inside the glove box was a torn map, circled in red ink. 3 properties, all remote, all connected to the same nonprofit. And under that, a handwritten note in Reyes's careful print. "If something happens to me, don't look for me. Follow Axel." The search widened. Drones, K9 units, roadblocks. Still no sign of Reyes, no sign of Axel. Until dawn broke 2 days later, and a bleeding dog staggered into the police station carrying something no one expected. Something that would change everything. The USB drive found on Axel's vest was small, no bigger than a key, sealed in a weatherproof bag. The plastic was scratched, the corners cracked, but somehow it had survived, just like the dog that carried it. Detective Lorna Hayes inserted it into her laptop in the precinct's secure room, surrounded by 3 other officers and the IT tech, Benny, who worked faster when no one spoke. The room was quiet, except for the hum of the computer and the steady beeping from the nearby monitor where Axel lay sedated, still breathing, still fighting. When the files opened, Benny frowned. Encrypted, not standard police files. Looks custom. "Can you break it?" Hayes asked. "I can try. Give me a few minutes." It didn't take long. The first folder was labeled, "For internal use only, MR." Inside were dozens of audio files, some short, some longer. There were photos, too. Grainy images of shipping containers, bruised faces, and distant shots of the old military warehouse. One folder was full of maps, marked in red pen, just like the torn one they had found in Reyes's cruiser. Hayes clicked on the first recording. A voice filled the room, low but clear. It was Officer Mia Reyes. "This is Reyes. Date and time logged. If you're hearing this, I'm either out of reach or something's gone wrong." Hayes glanced at the others. No one moved. "I started digging deeper into Beckett's nonprofit. It's not just shady accounting. I think they're holding people, veterans, maybe others. I've seen signs of confinement, makeshift holding rooms, chain marks on the floor. But there's something more. A transport route, underground, moving them out of state." Hayes skipped ahead to another file. "I'm inside now. Brought Axel. He's acting strange, alert, on edge. There's a smell he doesn't like gasoline and something. Rotten. There's a room I can't access. Heavy door, no keypad, just a guard." In the background you could hear Axel growling low. "I think they know I'm watching. If I don't make it back, if Axel does, listen to him. He knows where I am." The room was frozen in place. Benny opened another file. It was a video this time. Shaky footage from Reyes's body cam. She's walking through the brush, whispering to Axel. "Stay close. No barking." They reach a small concrete building, mostly buried under leaves and vines. A padlocked hatch sits on the ground. Reyes kneels down, tries the lock. No luck. "This is the second entrance. I think they're using it to move people at night. I heard trucks." Axel whines in the footage, pulling at his leash. "You smell something?" she asks. Then the video cuts. Hayes leaned back in her chair. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice didn't. She knew. She saw too much. "She trusted the dog," one officer said softly. Hayes nodded. "And he brought us the truth." Axel lay silent in the next room, wrapped in bandages, his chest rising and falling. Still alive, still holding the trail. Now it was up to them to follow it. Axel lay on the metal exam table in the back room of the precinct, his fur soaked with blood and dirt, his breath shallow but steady. A team of 2 emergency vets worked quickly, hands covered in gloves and faces tight with focus. Time mattered. "Shattered front paw," one said, gently pressing the swollen limb. "And his ribs. At least 2 are cracked, maybe more." "Something's under the skin here," said the other, pointing near Axel's shoulder. "Could be shrapnel. Could be metal fragments from a trap." Still, Axel didn't flinch. He didn't whine like most dogs would. He didn't yelp or try to bite. His body trembled, his muscles stiff from pain, but his eyes stayed open. Wide, amber, alive. They stitched what they could, cleaned the wounds, hooked him up to fluids and pain meds. But just as the sedative started to settle into his veins, Axel's leg twitched. Then again, his body jerked upward, trying to sit. "Whoa, easy, buddy," the younger vet whispered, placing a hand on his chest. "You're safe now. It's over." But Axel didn't believe it. He let out a sharp, frustrated whine and tried again. His broken paw slipped on the metal table. His hind legs kicked weakly, trying to gain traction. He didn't care that he could barely stand. He didn't care that his side bled, or that every breath rattled like broken glass. His eyes kept darting, toward the door, toward the hallway, toward something unfinished. "He's trying to go back," someone said from behind the glass. Detective Hayes had been watching through the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. She didn't blink as she spoke. He thinks the mission isn't done. Captain Monroe stepped in beside her. Dogs don't think like that, do they? Hayes shook her head. This one does. Inside the room, Axel let out a low growl, not out of fear but out of frustration. He twisted weakly on the table, pawing at the edge as if trying to leap off. The vet looked at Hayes, unsure. Should we sedate him again? No, Hayes said. Not yet. The vet hesitated, then nodded. Axel finally lay still again, chest heaving, his eyes locked on the door like it was calling to him. Or maybe like someone on the other side was waiting. Someone he hadn't found yet. He doesn't know Reyes is still missing, the vet said softly. No, Hayes replied. He knows exactly that she is. The room fell quiet again. The machines beeped softly, tracking the steady rhythm of a heart that refused to give in. A heart that was torn, bruised, and broken, but still beating like it had a job to finish. Axel was more than a dog. He was a message, a map, a partner on a mission. And no wound, not even the ones buried deepest, could make him forget that. He wasn't resting. He was waiting. Detective Lorna Hayes sat alone in the evidence room, the screen of her laptop glowing in the dim light. The latest file from the USB had just finished decrypting. Her stomach twisted as she read the name at the top of the document. Commander Hal Beckett. She stared at it for a long moment, hoping she was wrong. But there it was again, his signature, tied to internal memos, shadow payments, and property deeds linked to the so-called Veterans Nonprofit. It wasn't just a few shady financial choices. This was organized, controlled, and deadly. Beckett had always been seen as a hero. A retired military officer turned public figure, he ran fundraisers, gave speeches, and posed for pictures with mayors and senators. His nonprofit, Homefront Alliance, was praised in the news for helping homeless vets. But Reyes had seen what no one else had, or maybe what no one else dared to see. And now she was gone. Hayes opened another file. A scanned letter, handwritten, addressed to Reyes by her late partner, Officer David Shaw, the same man who had once worked under Beckett overseas. The letter was dated just weeks before Shaw's death in a supposed training accident. I don't trust him anymore, the letter read. Beckett's hiding something. Big. People disappear around him. If anything happens to me, don't let it go. Hayes leaned back in her chair. Her mind was racing, piecing it together. Shaw had found something, maybe even told Reyes. Then Shaw died. Reyes kept digging, and now she was missing too. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern, a setup. She called Captain Monroe into the room and pointed at the screen. He's at the center of it all, she said, her voice tight. Beckett isn't just part of the nonprofit. He built it, staffed it with his old contacts, bought land under fake names, all connected to locations Reyes flagged before she vanished. Monroe squinted at the files. You're saying she didn't walk into a trap by accident? She was led there, Hayes said. He wanted her to disappear, just like Shaw. Monroe cursed under his breath. And the damn press calls him a war hero. Hayes nodded slowly. Reyes knew. She found him out. But she didn't run. She gave everything to that dog and sent him home. They stood in silence, staring at the digital web of documents that all pointed to the same man. Commander Hal Beckett, once respected, now revealed. The implications were chilling. He had power, connections, influence. He could silence people, move them, erase them, and worst of all, he was trusted. The door opened. Benny from Tech stepped in, holding another printout. We traced the last burner phone used to contact Reyes, he said. Guess where it was pinged from? Hayes took the paper and scanned the address. Beckett's private lake house. He's not just hiding her, she whispered. He planned this. Monroe's face went pale. She didn't vanish into the dark. No, Hayes said, gripping the file. She was pushed. And now they were going to pull her out. Axel lay still in the recovery unit, wrapped in fresh bandages, an IV in his leg, and a soft blanket tucked around him. His breathing had steadied, his heart rhythm no longer spiking. The vet said it was a good sign. He was out of danger. For now. Detective Hayes sat nearby, watching him through the glass. He looked like he was finally resting, but even in sleep, his ears twitched, and his nose moved slightly, like he was still tracking something. Still working. She'd never seen anything like it. Across the hall in the precinct's media room, a small group gathered around a monitor. The tech team had finished pulling the files from Axel's tactical harness. His vest had a small front camera, often used for training and tracking. Most dogs barely triggered it, but somehow, Axel's had recorded over 40 minutes of footage. Grainy, shaky, but still intact. The first few minutes showed dark trees and uneven ground. Axel was moving fast, limping through a forest, breathing hard. The sounds were muffled, leaves crunching, distant barking, maybe a gunshot. Then a hard cut. The next frame sent a chill through the room. Officer Mia Reyes. She was tied to a chair in a dim room. Her face was bruised, a cut above her eyebrow dripping blood down her cheek. One eye was swollen, but her voice, when it came, was steady. "If you're watching this," she whispered, looking into the camera mounted on Axel's vest, "then he made it." She looked down at Axel, her hand trembling as she reached out and stroked his fur. "Good boy. You stayed with me, but it's time now." She winced in pain as she leaned forward and removed something from her back pocket. The USB drive. "I've marked the bunkers, the safe houses, the people involved. It's all here," she said, sliding the USB into a hidden pouch on his vest and zipping it shut. "You have to get it to them. No one else knows." Axel whined in the video, licking her fingers as she worked. "They'll try to stop you," she said softly, glancing toward the door. "But you've got one shot." The camera shook as she stood, barely able to stay upright. She dragged a small carpet to the side and revealed a trapdoor in the floor. It creaked as she opened it, revealing a narrow tunnel beneath. She bent down, gritting her teeth through the pain, and looked Axel in the eye. "Find them," she said. "Bring them here." Her hands pushed gently against his chest, guiding him toward the opening. He hesitated, looking back at her, ears low. "I'll be okay," she lied. "Go." Then, with one final push, she helped him disappear into the tunnel. The camera caught only darkness and the soft sound of her whisper as the hatch closed above him. "Please, bring me home." The screen went black. No one in the room spoke for a long time. Hayes swallowed hard, her hands clenched into fists. Axel hadn't just wandered back to the station. He had been sent, with a message no one else could have carried. The morning after the video was discovered, the precinct was filled with noise and movement. Phones rang non-stop. Officers rushed between rooms with printouts, maps, and equipment. Outside, reporters gathered near the front steps, calling out questions no one was ready to answer. The video had leaked. Somehow, someone in the department had shared it, and now the world knew. Officer Mia Reyes was alive, but missing, and the dog that brought her message home had become a symbol. Axel. News stations showed grainy footage of him arriving at the station, wounded but determined. Headlines called him a hero, a survivor. But inside the precinct, they weren't telling stories. They were chasing ghosts. The FBI had arrived that morning. 2 black SUVs parked near the loading dock, agents in suits filing in with serious faces and heavy folders. Agent Cassidy Reeve led the charge. Sharp-eyed, quiet, and clearly used to pressure, she gathered intel fast. She met with Hayes, reviewed the USB contents, and took one long look at the map Reyes had circled. 3 locations, she said, pointing to them. All owned by shell companies, all linked to Beckett, but none of them are active. "Not on paper," Hayes replied. They had already searched the first 2. One was empty. The other had fresh tire tracks and burned files in a barrel out back. Too late. That left the third, Beckett's private lake house. But even that didn't feel like enough. They needed something solid, something real, something that said, without question, "She's there." That's when Axel barked. The room had been quiet. He was resting in the corner on a thick foam mat, wrapped in gauze, breathing slow but steady. A nurse had stopped by earlier, checked his vitals, and told them he needed more time. More rest. But now he was standing, or trying to. His legs shook. His left paw still hung limp, wrapped tight, but his head was up, ears forward, eyes locked on something. The map, pinned to the wall, full of red lines and labels, it had become the center of the search. Axel hobbled closer, step by painful step. Everyone turned to look. He stopped in front of it, nose lifted. Then he barked. Once. Loud. Certain. Hayes froze. That location. She stepped forward, touching the pinned dot near the bottom corner. The lake house. Axel barked again, then collapsed to the floor, panting hard. Agent Reeve knelt beside him, eyes sharp. He's telling us something. He's telling us where she is, Hayes whispered. That was all they needed. Within an hour, tactical teams were loading into trucks. Drones were launched overhead. Boats were moved toward the lake's edge. Snipers positioned. The operation had begun. The world outside waited for answers. Inside, one dog, broken, bruised, and barely breathing, had just pointed them to the truth. The hunt had truly begun. The lake house sat quietly at the edge of the water, hidden behind a row of tall pine trees. From a distance, it looked peaceful, almost too peaceful. Morning mist floated over the lake like a thin veil, and the only sounds were birds and the soft rustle of leaves in the wind. But the people watching from the tree line weren't fooled. The tactical team moved in fast and silent. Black uniforms, rifles raised, radios clipped to shoulders. One group approached from the dock, another from the woods. Agent Reeve led from the front, her voice calm through the earpiece. Go. Now. The front door was unlocked. No alarms, no resistance. That was the first bad sign. Inside, the house was spotless, too clean for a place that had been lived in. The furniture was modern but plain. No pictures on the walls, no food on the counters, no signs of real life. But then they found the hallway. At the far end, a locked door with a keypad. One agent worked quickly, typing in codes from a list provided by tech support. On the third try, the lock clicked open. The door led to a staircase, and the stairs led down. The basement was cold, the walls bare concrete. The air smelled like metal and bleach. A low light flickered overhead, casting long shadows. That's when they found it. A room with a heavy soundproof door. Inside, the walls were lined with foam panels and wires. A table sat in the middle, covered with wires, cables, and an old camcorder. On the shelves were memory cards and small microphones. Recording setup, one agent said quietly, like they were filming interviews. But it wasn't for interviews. It was for control. Next door, a second room. Smaller. Darker. The air was worse here. Thick with something rotten and wrong. Restraints lay on the floor, torn and stained. A cot in the corner, metal legs bent. An empty water bottle on its side. And on the far wall, something that made everyone stop. 3 bloodied handprints, pressed into the wall like someone had tried to hold themselves up, or maybe crawl away. Above them, scratched deep into the drywall with something sharp, were 3 letters, AXE. At first, no one understood. Then Agent Reeve whispered, Axel. Detective Hayes felt her chest tighten. She left it for him. Or maybe for us. She was here, Reeve said. Recently. This was the last place. But Reyes was gone. No signs of where she went. No vehicles missing. No trails through the woods. Just that message. A name, written in pain. The team swept the rest of the house, but it was empty. No guards, no Beckett. Just silence. It felt like they were always one step behind. Still, the message gave them something they hadn't had before. Proof. She was alive. She was fighting. And she wanted Axel to keep going. Outside, the mist had started to lift. Sunlight touched the lake. But underground, beneath the lake house, a story had been carved in blood. And it wasn't over. That night, long after the raid on the lake house, the precinct was quiet. Most of the officers had gone home, and the few who stayed behind moved like ghosts through the halls, tired and tense. No one liked ending a day with more questions than answers. Axel lay on his recovery mat in the observation room, surrounded by soft blankets and gentle machines. He had been sleeping most of the day, but as the sun went down, something changed. His breathing grew faster, His ears twitched. Then he started to growl, low and steady. The nurse came in, thinking he needed more pain medicine. But when she reached for the IV, Axel snapped his head around and let out a sharp bark. Not in pain, not in fear. A warning. He pushed up on his front legs, wincing as his injured paw shook beneath him. Then came the howl. Long, loud, full of something deeper than anyone in the room could name. Agent Reeve rushed in. "What's wrong with him?" The nurse stepped back, eyes wide. "He won't stop." Axel kept howling, looking toward the window, his body tense. That's when Detective Hayes burst through the door, holding a phone. "We got something," she said, breathless. They all followed her down the hall to the audio lab where Benny, the tech, had a file playing on loop. It was a voicemail left on one of the burner phones recovered at the lake house. The voice was faint, crackling under static, but clear enough. "This is Officer Mia Reyes. I don't know how long I have. They moved me again. I don't think they know I left the recording. If Axel made it, tell him I'm still here. I'm not giving up." Everyone froze. "She's alive," Hayes said, barely above a whisper. "But not for long." The team sprang into motion. Reeve reviewed every second of the voicemail, listening to background sounds, dripping water, a faint hum, the buzz of old lights. "Play it again," she said. This time, Axel heard it too. From the hallway, he let out another loud bark. Not angry, not scared, focused. Hayes stepped out to look at him. "He knows." Reeve turned to Benny. "Run the sound through the database. Cross-reference with known locations near Beckett's last tower ping." Benny's fingers flew across the keyboard. 3 minutes later, he pulled up a location. "Water treatment facility," he said. "Abandoned for years. About 40 minutes from here. Nobody goes near it." Hayes looked at Axel. He had somehow pulled himself to his feet again, leaning against the doorframe, eyes locked on her like he was begging them to move. "I guess that's where we're going," she said. Reeve nodded. "Gear up. We're leaving in 10. Outside, the wind had picked up. Clouds rolled in over the hills, covering the stars. But inside the precinct, there was only one thing anyone could hear. Axel's howl, echoing down the halls like a call to battle. They were close now, and they weren't going to leave without her. Rain came down in sheets as the convoy of black vehicles rolled toward the abandoned water treatment facility. Wind howled through the trees, and thunder cracked across the sky. But no one in the trucks noticed the weather. They were focused, ready. This was the final shot. Inside one of the armored trucks, Axel sat up, braced between two officers. His bandages were still tight, and his left paw was wrapped thick, but his eyes were alive, sharper than ever. He had barely rested since the voicemail. He knew. Somehow, he knew they were close. Agent Reeve checked her weapon. Hayes loaded a fresh clip. The team moved like one, silent and fast. The building loomed ahead, broken windows like hollow eyes staring into the dark. The outer fences were rusted, torn in places. A perfect place to hide something. Or someone. At the back of the property, the team breached the gate and moved through the ruins. Old pipes, crumbling staircases, empty storage rooms. Then a signal came through on the radio. "Found something. Northwest corner. Shipping container. Locked." Reeve and Hayes ran, boots splashing through muddy puddles. The container sat in the shadows, painted gray, chains wrapped around the handle. Fresh footprints in the dirt. A trail. "Bolt cutters," Reeve said. But before the tool hit the chain, a voice came from behind the container. "Don't bother." Hal Beckett stepped into the light, soaked in rain, a pistol in his hand. His face was calm, like this was a meeting, not a trap. "I knew you'd find me," he said. "I just didn't expect you to bring the dog." Behind him, Reyes was barely visible through a small crack in the container door. Her face pale, her hair soaked with sweat. Her wrists were chained to the wall. She looked up, dazed but breathing. "Let her go," Hayes said, gun raised. Beckett shook his head. "You don't understand. She knew everything. And now, so do you. But it's too late." He raised his gun toward the door, toward Reyes. Then everything happened at once. A blur of fur and muscle launched from the open truck. Axel. He moved like lightning, ignoring the pain in his body, pushing past the agents, through the rain, through the mud, through everything. Beckett turned just in time to see him coming. Axel slammed into his side, jaws clamping down on his wrist. The gun fired, but the shot went wide, hitting nothing but metal. They crashed to the ground, Beckett yelling, trying to shake him off. But Axel didn't let go. Hayes rushed in, tackled Beckett, cuffing him as he struggled. Blood dripped from his arm, mixing with the rain. He didn't speak again. Reeve kicked the gun away and opened the container. Reyes collapsed into her arms, weak but alive. "Told him," she whispered. "Told Axel to find you." "You did good," Reeve said, holding her close. "You both did." Outside, Axel stood over Beckett's body, soaked and shaking, but standing tall. He had finished what she started. And he had brought her home. The sun was shining bright over the Midtown Police Department, the sky clear for the first time in weeks. A small stage had been set up in the parking lot, rows of chairs lined neatly in front of it. The whole department had gathered. Officers, detectives, support staff, even a few retired K-9 handlers had come back for the moment. There was no sound except the fluttering of the flag and the soft click of cameras waiting. Then the doors opened. Officer Mia Reyes stepped out slowly, still walking with a cane, but stronger than she had been. The bruises on her face were gone. The color had returned to her skin. But her eyes, those eyes, held something new, something deeper. She had seen the edge and walked back from it. Beside her walked Axel. His steps were slow but steady. A fresh scar ran down his side. His bandaged paw had healed just enough to walk short distances, but he held his head high, his ears forward, his chest proud. The crowd rose to their feet. Applause rolled across the courtyard like thunder. Reyes smiled softly and leaned down. "Easy, buddy. We're almost there." Axel looked up at her, then back at the stage. They moved together, step by step, until they reached the podium. Captain Monroe stepped forward, holding a small wooden box. His voice was steady but thick with emotion. "Today we honor a partner who gave everything, not just to the badge but to the person behind it. Axel didn't just survive. He fought, he protected, and he brought one of our own home." He opened the box and held up a silver tag, freshly engraved. "He never gave up." Reyes knelt down and unclipped Axel's tactical vest, setting it gently aside. Then she clipped the new tag onto his collar. "There," she whispered. "No more missions, just home." Axel gave a soft grunt, then rested his head against her shoulder. The crowd stayed silent for a long moment. Then Monroe raised his hand, and every officer in the courtyard snapped to attention. One by one, they saluted. Not to the badge, not to the flag, to the dog who never stopped searching. After the ceremony, Reyes sat on a bench just outside the station. The crowd had started to leave, the chatter fading behind her. She ran her hand slowly down Axel's back, feeling every bump of the healing scars beneath his fur. He lay at her feet now, stretched out in the sunlight, eyes half closed, but alert, always alert. "I would have died in that place," she said softly, voice catching in her throat, "if not for you." Axel raised his head just a little and let out one quiet, steady bark, like he already knew. And maybe he did, because heroes don't always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear fur. If this story moved you, please give it a like. It's a small gesture, but it means a lot. And if you believe in honoring animal heroes like Axel, hit subscribe and join us for more stories that remind us what